Well, good morning and happy anniversary. I bring you greetings from Episcopalians across this church, from the Episcopalians in Taiwan, in Micronesia, in Honduras, Ecuador, Colombia, Venezuela, Curacao, Haiti, which is our largest diocese, the Dominican Republic, the British and U.S. Virgin Islands, Austria, Belgium, France, Germany, Italy, Switzerland, and the rest of the United States. They pray for you. I would ask your prayers for them. There's something profoundly tender and moving about celebrating your long presence and faithfulness here on Good Shepherd Sunday. This congregation began with the death of a young woman on the cusp of adulthood, and it's named for another young woman whose vocation was to bear a child also destined to die young. Each has been a shepherd. For Mary gave us the Good Shepherd in the flesh, and Elida's death began to gather this flock. I don't know how many sheep there are around here. This part of the world is far more famous for lobsters and seagulls and bluefin tuna, none of them easily herded, in spite of advertising for free-range lobster. Yet the lives of beloved children of God have shaped this community for a life of shepherding. We're all sheep, and when we hear the Good Shepherd calling us to come and follow, we become shepherds. If we're going to love God fully and love our neighbors as ourselves, then we have to go searching for the lost and the sick and the wandering and help them to find a place in the fold. You're shepherding people, young people at Long Creek Youth Development Center, and here also through Ray and Godly Play, Preble Street Kitchen and Super Supper help feed hungry sheep. And your ministry in Haiti guides the young toward right pathways and still waters and green pasture. St. Mary's began here with a fairly small fold of sheep and shepherds that primarily welcomed familiar and closely related sheep. The Brown family and their friends and relatives made up most of this congregation for quite a long time. This was an enclave of sheep who belonged. It would likely still be filled with those 99 sheep that Jesus says are already safely ensconced in the corral, if some people here hadn't begun to go searching. What helped you go searching for the lost ones? Elida's untimely death was part of the original DNA of this place, even if those genes weren't robustly expressed for a while. Today, the care and nurture of children characterizes a lot of your ministry, both within and beyond this congregation. Healthy and growing congregations almost always make that a priority. Jesus notes that sometimes wolves get into the sheepfold, or hired hands fail to notice their presence, and the sheep suffer. The other sheep in the fold share a responsibility to keep the wolves at bay and to care for those who are injured. If we ignore the wolves or don't tell the truth about their presence, there will never be real healing, growth, and wholeness. Jesus and the disciples had to deal with Judas and his legacy. So must we. It takes discernment and wisdom to tell the difference between intruders with evil intentions and sheep who simply represent the diversity of God's creation. Christians, indeed most human beings, are usually surprised by the presence of sheep who seem to be other. Loving our neighbors as ourselves insists that we begin by seeing the image of God before we see anything else. There must be a place for every other kind of sheep in the fold, and Jesus is clear about it. He says, I have other sheep that don't belong to this fold. I must bring them also, and they'll listen to my voice. That includes the ones who go astray. That's what forgiveness and seeing the image of God are all about. And there's a wonderful understanding in Orthodox Christianity that in the time between the crucifixion and the resurrection, Jesus went into hell and searched and searched and searched until he found Judas and dragged him out. That's part of our shepherding work too. The sheep in this fold are all called to help shepherd others. We have one good shepherd who asks us to come and follow, to seek the lost and serve the least. There will always be more sheep of other folds to discover and meet, to befriend, feed, and heal. Sometimes the lost sheep is you or me. When we're feeling lost, who helps bring us home again? It's usually a friend or a loved one, somebody who knows our name and says, come on, come in, come home. You are well loved. You're treasured. You're God's own beloved. The Brown family might be surprised to learn about the diversity of this congregation today, and perhaps even more by the sheep you're discovering in Haiti and Preble Street. Who has surprised you? And what about those who have no close friend to show them a loving God with skin on? Whenever I go out running early in the morning in a city, I almost always discover sleepers on the street, or on park benches, or tucked behind a bush. Sometimes I have to look a little harder in places where the camouflage is better. Is that a person wrapped in a blanket in that dark corner? I may not be able to see a face, but I'm fairly sure it is. Are those bags of treasured possessions, or is it garbage? And I wonder, where will this one break his fast? Where will she sleep tonight? Sheepfolds like Preble Street begin to gather and care for lost sheep. The Bishop of Costa Rica told me about a small group of women who came to the city regularly for medical treatment and had no place to wait and rest through the day. They asked for shelter in church after church. All of them turned them away. And finally, one congregation opened its doors to people whom some see as pariahs. Today, those first 8 women have become 200, who now go back into their communities to help others heal and find hope after learning that they have AIDS. A congregation in North Carolina was closing its doors for lack of members. Its shepherds found the courage to look outside those doors, and today that building houses a church that calls itself Holy Chaos. It's a truly Catholic mix of homeless and housed, rich and poor, black and brown and white, sober and not so much, and a few dogs who bring their owners. They worship on Wednesdays in the middle of the day. They host AA groups. They grow a vegetable garden and run a a clothes closet. And on Wednesdays, they feed all comers with a gourmet meal. And they offer 8 respite beds so that those without homes can recover from hospitalization or medical treatment until they're well. Sheep of all sorts are finding a home there. There's some powerful shepherding work going on in Maine, up in Aroostook County, that's trying to heal relationships between the Abenaki, the first people of this land, and the descendants of later immigrants. We've often treated one another as predators rather than fellow sheep, and we have miles to go before we all sleep in one fold. The heart of the gospel is about the immensely abundant love of God for all God's children and all God's creatures. It's summed up in that wonderful song that you might know. All God's creatures got a place in the choir. Some sing low and some sing higher. Some sing out loud on the telephone wire. Some just clap their hands or paws or anything they've got now. Do you know that one? There is a place for every child of God and a fold for every sheep, where each one is welcomed as Christ himself, fed and watered, safely housed, and encouraged to grow toward the abundant, loving way of life for which we've been created. That's why St. Mary's exists. That's why it's endured for 125 years. That's why it will continue into the future if it keeps answering the voice of one who says, "Follow me." What kind of shepherd are you? What sheep are you tending or searching for? Where do you look for your own shepherding? And perhaps most important, how will the flock of shepherds here keep searching for the lost and the least? Keep doing that. Keep looking until the very last one has found a home in the sheepfold.